Dishonored is a game that I wasn't sure if I'd like. When I initially tried it, I escaped Coleridge Prison and headed for the sewers, but had to stop playing since the head bobbing initially gave me a headache, and I stayed away from the game for a while. However, after resisting it and turning the head bobbing off, I had a fantastic time skulking around Dunwall and assassinating targets. I know that this game can be incredibly varied in terms of playstyle, so I will outline what I went for this playthrough so that you and I are both on the same page when going through my thoughts today. I went for low chaos, tried to stealth my ways through every scenario but fought people head on or ran if I was caught. And with that out of the way, let's sneak past the guards and assassinate the Lord Regent as I talk about Dishonored. First thing right off the bat is that this game is gorgeous. There was actually a point during the mission on Cobwyn's Bridge that I had to just stop and stare at the view surrounding the level because it was that pretty. Every piece of this game is designed to look amazing, no matter where you're seeing it from. The streets of Dunwall look amazing from high up, where you'll be for most of the game, but that beauty isn't lost when you traverse the ground level. I'm confident I could grab any piece of my footage from this game and the areas would look incredible. I do think this is the best looking game I've ever played. Out of Resident Evil Village, Halo Infinite, Hitman 2, Spider-Man, and a whole bunch of other amazing looking games, this game wipes the floor with them, despite being from 2012. Now, this isn't me saying that these games don't look great, they absolutely do, but I think I know what makes Dishonored so nice to look at. This game goes for an art style that is pretty close to cel shading, but apparently is not, and is cartoony, without that being distracting from the gritty realism of the story being told. Kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Avatar? Really? That show on Nickelodeon about the bald kid? Yeah, that show on Nickelodeon. That's not dark and gritty, you dick! The story of Avatar is more emotional and engaging than it would initially appear on the surface. I mean, this is one of the few shows that had me in tears multiple times, because I was so connected to the world and the characters and their stories, and they were all interwoven with one another in interesting ways. I could talk about this all day, but let's go back to Dishonored. Dishonored's story is gritty and has dark themes, while its characters have greatly exaggerated features like noses and chins, and an almost watercolour palette, with the environments being soaked in pale blues or deep oranges, always setting the mood for whatever the current mission is. The art style helps to enhance the story it's telling, rather than holding it back, and I believe if the game had gone for the realistic look, it would have meant the game wouldn't hold up for years to come. On the gameplay front, it's also fantastic. I felt it was primarily built as a stealth game due to the occasional slight clunkiness of the combat controls, and since you were often sneaky into places you shouldn't be. So I played it as such, and tried to kill as few people as possible. This is considered a low chaos run. However, if I was to kill everyone I saw and act in certain other ways to characters in the game, it would be a high chaos run. The differences between these two are seen throughout the game in many ways, but the biggest change is of course the ending, which we will talk about later. The game is great at conditioning the player into incorporating certain rituals into their playstyle. One of the earliest examples I can think of is always trying to get the high ground. A lot of rooms in Coleridge Prison are big and open with minimal places to hide, and this can lead to the player struggling through these areas. A few of the rooms have an obvious way through them, but they lead towards a stealth approach. But as the rooms continue, they introduce elements of the high ground, like pipes running along the side of the hallways. These pipes can be climbed upon, and they lead you to higher ground, where the player realises they get a better view and more of an idea of guards' positions from this perspective. This will lead the player searching for the high ground in the next room they enter, and it's a good place to start whenever you enter an unfamiliar location. Do some surveying, construct a battle plan before diving in, and you'll have a much better time. This is all without a tutorial telling you that the high ground is good. The level design will naturally lead a player to discover how helpful the high ground is, and they will carry this forward throughout the whole game. There are also multiple ways to get through all the levels. The game tells you this explicitly near the beginning. Dishonored allows you to experiment with your approach in a similar manner to how people reported Breath of the Wild allows you to experiment. The game gives you an area, situation, and a set of rules, and lets you experiment freely within this sandbox. This makes the game quite accessible, as your approach can vary so wildly that more or less anything you can think of within the area is possible, as long as you play by the game's rules. This can include a high or low chaos run, stealth or combat run, no powers, and I'm sure there are so many more since this game is open to almost anything. There are a few gadgets you can grab to add to your arsenal, like grenades, a gun, and a crossbow with different kinds of bolts. There are also many powers you can get, like Dark Vision, Bend Time, Possession, and the best of them all, Blink. Blink is by far the most useful ability, and I used it constantly throughout my playthrough. It quickly zips you across large gaps or between enemies, or even in some cases where I used it, zipping behind an enemy that has spotted you so that you can kill them quickly. The only other move I bought after Blink was Bend Time, as it stops time for a short period, allowing you to slip past enemies or save yourself in a pinch scenario. These powers are accessed by exploring the levels and collecting runes, which are used to upgrade Corvo with new powers, or to increase stats like health or agility. These are found by using the heart that the Outsider gives you. Simply pull out the heart at any point in the game and it will show you the nearby runes and bone charms in the area. Bone charms are another collectible in the game that give you certain abilities and advantages against your foes when equipped, yet another way to spice up your playstyle. I also really enjoyed the story of Dishonored. Corvo was a great stand-in for the player since he is yet another silent protagonist, as if we didn't have enough of those already.
Objection! Hi, I'm Sheeb. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to mention that the protagonist talks in every other franchise entry. In fact, even Corvo is fully voiced in Dishonored 2. His voice actor is Stephen L. Russell, who also voices Garrett, who's the player character from the game Thief. Dishonored takes a lot of inspiration from Thief, which is kind of one of the first true immersive sims, so this is a nice little nod to the game's precursor, and also I've already been talking for too long and too fast, so shut up now, goodbye.
Like most silent protagonists, it allows the player to immerse themselves in the world of the game without that immersion being interrupted by the character they are playing as saying something that the player is not thinking themselves. It allows you to really craft your own version of who Corvo is. For example, in my High Chaos run that I streamed on Twitch, I had Corvo murdering just about everyone he met, including civilians, with a particular hatred for sex workers and the Golden Cat. This was all completely me role-playing and acting within a mindset that I thought my version of Corvo in High Chaos would have. But in Low Chaos, I made him kind, compassionate, and only using violence as a last resort when in a situation where he could die. It's completely up to the player. Moving on to plot, we begin as Corvo Atano, the Lord Protector to the Empress of Dunwall. You have been sent away to find a cure for a plague that is ravishing the city. You return to Dunwall with bad news of no cure existing, and before you know it, the Empress is assassinated in front of you and her daughter Emily is kidnapped. You are framed for this murder and kidnapping by the Royal Spy Master and Hiriam Burrows, who becomes the new ruler of Dunwall. 6 months pass and Corvo is due to be executed, but he escapes the prison and finds a group called the Loyalists, who know you are not guilty and want to find Emily and return her to the throne, led by Admiral Havelock, Pendleton, and a guy called Martin, who we save in one of the early missions. You find many targets and either assassinate them or get information from them as to who your next target is. All of these people being part of the government that is taking control of Dunwall. You eventually make your way up the chain and kill Burrows and intend to return Emily to the throne, but you are poisoned and betrayed by the leaders of the Loyalists you've been working for this whole time. They now want to control the government by manipulating Emily while taking the glory of saving her from themselves, despite you doing all the work. You are not dead, however, as Samuel, the guy who's been taking you to all your previous missions, did not put enough poison in your glass to kill you, and helps you to get Emily back and take down Havelock, Martin, and Pendleton. We head to a fortified island for our final mission, and we stealth our way through to eventually reach Havelock, and find that he has killed Martin and Pendleton, before we kill him ourselves and save Emily, finally returning her to the throne of Dunwall. There are many side characters to help out and talk to throughout the game, but I'm only covering the main story here. The story was incredibly gripping and the portrayal genuinely shocked me as I wasn't expecting it. I was quite attached to Samuel by the time the betrayal hit and made him staying with me to the end even more emotionally effective. He had spoken to me about his opinions on the events in Dunwall while taking me to my missions throughout the game, and I was so upset that he could have betrayed me and it was all a front, but he was a real one. I really wanted Corvo to succeed as well, since he was framed for a crime he never committed, and clearly had a father-daughter-like relationship with Emily, and I really wanted that to continue. I want to quickly take a dive in a different direction to how I normally look at games to try and use some of my studies to look at one of the themes I noticed throughout Dishonored. The game doesn't delve into it story-wise, but the environment tells a story all on its own. The game has some Marxist themes going on. When I speak about Marxist themes, I'm not discussing the political alignment. I mean looking at the game world through the Marxist framework, which is based in stories of class and class division. So from that, I noticed that tons of the streets of Dunwall are full of the sick and poor, or the buildings are run down, industrial or seedy in how they look. Meanwhile, the buildings that the enemies often occupy are brightly lit, well maintained, and in the level Lady Boyle's Last Party, we directly enter one of the richest houses in Dunwall, and it stands in stark contrast to the streets we spend most of the game in. There are other areas throughout the game that can be used as examples too, like the High Overseer's Meeting Hall or Colwyn's Bridge. The rich are also always physically higher up in this game compared to the sick and poor, obviously being a metaphor for their respective status in the society. These are just the examples that are coming to mind as I write this script, but I'm sure there's more all over the game world if you look in the right places. The game is also one of the best examples of branching paths I've ever seen. It doesn't give you binary good and evil choices in the vein of games like Infamous, where the choice is usually quite obvious with what path it will lead you down. Dishonored lets you choose how evil you want to be in gameplay. You can choose to knock out every guard and silently sneak around, or you can run head on at the enemy and murder as many of them as possible. The same can be said about all your targets throughout the story. You don't have to murder them. The game will give you non-lethal means of eliminating them if you look for them, like doing a side quest to have Slackjaw kidnap the Pendleton twins instead of killing them yourself. The main thing I'm getting at is that all of the choices are made in the gameplay and not in dialogue options or cutscenes we have little control over. It's fantastic, and I'm surprised it wasn't spoken about in the same way Undertale was with giving you a choice. The game also has some DLC that expand upon the story of Dishonored and have you play as some different characters, but I didn't play them for this video. I might cover them in our time since I want to play more of this and return to Dunwall. I also want to play more to see how else I can approach an objective, or have someone else play it while I'm there and see how they go about things. I want to see how my Corvo stacks up with someone else's Corvo. The same way that people compare how they think Gordon Freeman in Half-Life reacts to things going on in Black Mesa or City 17. And that's all I have to say about Dishonored. I hope you all enjoyed seeing me delve into something that isn't survival horror. I heard about Dishonored through watching Leadhead and talking to a friend about it, and I really wanted to talk to all of you about it after the amazing time I'd had with it. I really want to thank FakeShibe for being part of this video. I'm hoping to do more of these reviews with other people so you don't just need to listen to me all the time. But that's all from me today, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.